Hello, hello, and welcome back to Literally Heinous. We have a very special guest on tonight. I'm actually so excited for this. You are my second author that I've interviewed, and I'm so excited to talk about. You're my first novelist. So today we have on Heather Colley. Her debut novel, The Gilded Butterfly Effect, just came out this week in October. Her short fiction has won tons of awards you've never even heard of, but they're really good. I can promise you that. She's a PhD student in English literature at Oxford University. She has a master's degree from St. Andrews University and a bachelor's degree from University of Michigan. But here at Literally Heinous headquarters, we are an Ohio State podcast
Oh
first.
no. Okay. I didn't
But I'm gonna have to let it slide just because you're so fun and so smart. I will let the
Okay.
Michigan thing slide today. But Heather Colley, welcome to Literally Heinous.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here and to chat about the book, which is actually set in Ann Arbor. So
I
the
know.
Arbor comes back.
I was so excited when I got sent this book or when I was asked to interview you because, and I read the description. I was like, oh my God, college
Yeah.
life, sorority life, University of Michigan. Like, this
Yeah.
is something I can totally relate to.
Good. Yeah. Very similar schools, I guess. Similar towns, similar Greek life between Michigan and Ohio State.
For sure. Cool. So Heather, thank you so much for joining us. I know you're live from London right now. But before we get into it, can you just tell the listeners a little bit about your background? Where'd you grow up? What are you doing now?
Yeah, I grew up just outside New York City in Westchester, and now I live in London because I'm getting my PhD over here in England in English literature, and I'm on my last year of that, so dissertation writing time. Before this, I did my master's and also was a teacher, a high school teacher in English literature here in London as well. And I did my BA at Michigan and graduated in 2020, so during the pandemic. And I wrote the book, the first draft of the book, while I was there, while I was in undergrad there. And then it's kind of had several revisions over the years since then.
So you graduated from Michigan in 2020?
Yes.
Okay, I graduated from Ohio State in 2020, and you've lived 75 more lives than me, and that's amazing. So wait, that's crazy. Okay, so I let me just get my timeline straight. So you graduated from Michigan in 2020. You got your master's from St. Andrews University. Is that in UK or is that in America?
Yeah, Scotland.
Oh, Scotland. Oh my gosh. Okay, cool. And then you've been in your PhD, but it's only been 5 years since you graduated college. How are you in your last year of your PhD?
Well, PhDs in the UK, because you have to do your master's before you start your PhD in the UK, which is why I went to St. Andrews first, they typically only last about 4 years, whereas an American PhD will last 6 or 7. So I'm now in my fourth year, but it'll be 5 years total in this kind of area of study with the master's degree. And then I was a teacher between my master's and my PhD as well.
That is amazing. So when did you first fall in love with reading and writing?
Reading very young, for I think some of my earliest memories are of reading books, even just picture books. I can very distinctly remember reading things like Winnie the Pooh and Peter Rabbit, and then moving on to things like Little Women. And I was in high school. I guess we were both in high school during the kind of Twilight craze and the
Yeah,
Divergent
yes.
craze, which was a really fun time to be like a 15-year-old reader.
Yeah.
Um, Pretty Little Liars.
Don't
So
even talk to me about Pretty Little Liars. Like, I had no business reading those books and I
yeah,
was addicted.
same. I That was definitely one of the first books where I was truly addicted in a serious way. So that was a really interesting time to be coming of age as a readerly person. But very early on, I was a reader, and then I probably started writing in high school.
Yeah, that's amazing. Who would you say is your like inspiration with your writing?
I have a few. Some of the more modern people would be Martin Amis, who is a British postmodernist writer that I've always just thought is so amazing. Toni Morrison, I think, is sort of one of the
Mhm.
greatest of all time. For more contemporary people, Ainsley Hogarth, who did Mother Thing a few years ago, Hallie Butler, who just released Banal Nightmare and had a couple of other books before that, Rachel Cusk. Um, and yeah, so that's kind of who I read now, who's sort of releasing now. And then I also read a lot of modernists, so
Yeah.
1900, 1930s for my
Yeah.
studies. They inspire me too.
So you mentioned that you wrote this book that we're talking about today, Gilded Butterfly Effect, in college. So you wrote that during your undergrad, and can you kind of walk us through what the process from conception to publication of writing a book is?
Yeah, I wrote the book in undergrad. Probably in my sort of last year, really, was when I kind of got the draft down. I started it with a short story. It actually, the first iteration of it was what is now a chapter, which is the first chapter where you see this character called Trip, who's a fraternity boy, and he meets a girl called Loretta, and it's just a scene in their fraternity house basement. And
Hmm.
that was a short story. So if you read it even now, it could be a kind of self-contained narrative. After I wrote that story, I just thought that it was an interesting world, and I just wanted to think about who else might populate it and how they might
Yeah.
interact with one another and with this guy's trip. So it kind of emerged from that story, and most of my fiction, I have the ending in mind very early on. So I remember writing the last scene probably when I only had a couple thousand words, and then it kind of emerged from there.
Wow. So was the whole process, so when you finished the book, how, at what point did you get like published and get an agent and like did you actually have, you were like, oh, this is going to be a real thing?
Yeah, so obviously, traditional publishing, especially as a debut literary fiction author, is like a crazy, complicated world, and it takes a long time. So I
Yeah.
had an agent in 2020 for the book, and it died on sub, which just means that no houses didn't buy it from her.
Yeah.
So I kind of shelved it and got my master's and focused on academics a bit, and then revisited it and focused on indie presses. So Three Rooms Press
Hmm.
eventually wanted it and bought it. So we signed the deal for that about a year ago, last November. And then from then, it's also you have to revise it with their editors and so on.
Yeah. Where did you get the inspiration for your characters and to create them?
Yeah, the characters are hyperbolic. They're extreme examples of, especially for the two girls, Stella and Penny, they're
Mhm.
kind of extreme examples of mental health issues. They have a lot of things that they struggle with internally. Um, to me, they just kind of came from some of the issues that I saw, some of the issues that I felt while I was that age. And then I
Yeah.
took it to the extreme with both of them and made them very troubled and descriptive in how they think about their issues. But yeah, I think they just kind of emerged from a lot of issues that come from being a young woman on campus.
Yeah. When you were at the University of Michigan, were you at parties like these?
Yeah, yeah, I was. I was in a sorority for a year or two. Um, and people will ask like, "Oh my God, is this autobiographical?" And it really isn't. Like my sorority was known for like their high GPA. Like it could, my
Hmm.
sorority in particular couldn't have been more different from
Yeah.
these sorts of things. But if you are a student at a school like this, as you know, and you're
Hmm.
somewhat involved in these organizations, you'll end up at places like this, in parties like this, even if you're not in Greek life or if you're not in
Yeah.
school. This is just sort of college parties. So yeah, I found myself in these sorts of places, and I always just thought it would be really interesting for fiction.
Yeah. So when you were writing the book and developing the characters, were there any like movies or music or TV shows or real life or other media that inspired this?
I am very much inspired by music. Yeah, I there's a lot of actually like jazz and blues in the book,
Hmm.
which might be a little bit unexpected because it's quite a modern book. But that's what I was listening to at the time. I'm kind of always inspired by whatever it is I'm listening to at the time. I use it structurally and thematically. Um, Films and TV shows, to be honest, I think I take less inspiration from those than I do from my actual reading and from
Yeah.
music.
Okay. So you're getting, is your PhD, it has something to do with jazz, right?
Yes. Yeah, so I look at 19th century poetry that in some way relates to the music that was developing at that time, which was blues, ragtime, and very early
Yeah.
jazz. So I basically look at like what I call musical aesthetics in these poems.
Yeah. That is so interesting. Um, were there any like specific instances or stories that you have at University of Michigan that fed into certain plot points?
You know, I think in general the setting came out a lot from the way that I saw it as a student. I think there's a lot of moments where the campus itself like plays a big role and is a kind of a
Yeah.
character in and of itself. So you get that sort
It's
of
like Sex
central.
in the City. Like
Yes,
New York
yeah,
City is the fifth character.
exactly. And you think if you removed the setting, it wouldn't be the same story at all. So you have that street that is just packed with bars and
Yeah.
all full of undergraduates every day, every night. And then you have the kind of leafy, beautiful, ivy covered campus. And all of that comes from my memories of a very, very specific time and place as a student.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so I wanted to read one quote back to you.
Okay.
So the book talks a lot about drugs and different kinds of drugs and like their effects. And I really liked this quote that you wrote about ketamine, which is first it tricks you with pure euphoria, then it dives deep and roots around. It sits down at the kitchen table and it starts to chat with you about all kinds of things that you told yourself you've forgotten. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is just a slice of some of the fucking writing that is in this book. Like, this book is poetry.
Thank you
Like,
so
the
much.
writing in here is truly so good. I always say to people, because I sound like such a douchebag when I talk about books that I read, like I hate bad writing and
I have the same.
I hate elementary writing. Like, I'm not going to throw anyone under the bus, but certain books these days that like are really popular, I read this and I'm like, I could have written this in middle school. Your writing is fantastic, and this quote about ketamine was fascinating to me because how do you know this? Like,
Yeah.
did you interview druggies?
It's a fair question. I would tell you if I have never done ketamine. Um, Actually, ketamine is like quite a British drug.
Hmm.
Like I don't think that I knew about this sort of thing even when I was at Michigan as an
Yeah,
undergrad. But I have spent a lot of time in England, and you know, you realize that certain things are just much more a part of the culture, especially youth culture, when you go away. So I always found this idea of ketamine quite absurd in a lot of ways.
yeah,
And I needed something for these girls. They're already extreme. They're already quite absurd in their behavior and their decisions. So for that final thing that Penny tries, I needed it to be extreme and absurd, and I
yeah,
needed it to be different than what she's done. So in my mind, I just went with kind of like the most absurd drug that I knew.
yeah.
That I realize now is not really even, at least when I was a student, not really even a part of, I think, American college culture. It's to me, it's more British.
Yeah, it's definitely a thing in New York.
Oh, okay.
Um, yeah, so and like I'm in Brooklyn and Bushwick, so it's definitely a big thing here. Like, people talk about getting into K-holes and whatever.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's definitely a thing here. I think I first heard about it when I was in college, but not at school. Like I went to a music festival and like that was the first time I heard whispers of like
Okay, yeah.
other people doing ketamine, and I was like, that sounds so scary because it's a horse tranquilizer.
Yeah, that's exactly why I always thought it was absurd. And
Yeah.
no judgment whatsoever. No, wouldn't judge anyone.
Yeah. Here at Literally Heinous headquarters, we're open-minded. Like
Yeah,
we love party stories, we love crazy stories. The Haniacs are very open-minded, non-judgmental people.
yeah,
So,
and, yeah, good. And that's how I feel. Like, if you are
yeah,
like the girls in the book, great. I actually really like the girls in the book. Um,
totally. Yeah, it's definitely a thing here in Brooklyn. You hear
okay.
about it. But yeah, I just really liked the writing and I loved how specific it was, and it was a really beautiful picture and a beautiful way to talk about drugs.
Yeah.
Um, and there's a lot more of that. Okay, there's a lot more where that came from, everybody. So I want to talk a little bit about your writing style. So the dialogue and the prose was really interesting to me because it felt really like stream of consciousness, and there weren't a lot of like back and forth quotations. And I'm really sorry, I haven't taken an English class in a long time, so I don't know the best way to like describe these things. Um, so how would you describe your writing style? And it is unique, and why did you choose to write like that?
Well, For me, the most important thing in writing and in my reading has always been voice. I have always gravitated towards authors who have a really distinct voice. Like, for example, if you pick up a Vonnegut book or a Toni Morrison book, you don't even need to see who wrote it. It doesn't need a cover,
Yeah.
but you know right away that it's them because there's something really idiosyncratic about their writing.
Hmm.
So that's always been something that I've admired. So something that I've tried to emulate as well. Um, I do use a stream of consciousness style. I like to get into the heads of my characters. I think that's one of the most interesting things about reading when you really feel like you're seeing what someone's truly thinking, what they're truly feeling. So I try to do that through stream of consciousness. And yeah, there's not a whole lot of sort of dialogue conversation because it's not necessarily like a plot-driven book,
Yeah.
um, in the same way that a genre sort of fiction book might be. And it's more about their reflections, their observations, with occasional kind of small conversations between characters.
Yeah. Um, okay, so I want to talk so in like modern discourse around books and the way that people are consuming books now. Um, there's been a big boom in smut, and
Yeah.
that's what the streets are calling it. Spicy book talk, whatever. I wanted to know what your take on smut is and why is there no sex in your book? No, that's not what I'm asking, but I did notice in your book there's not any like explicit sex scenes when there could have been, and I feel like there is kind of a demand for that. So was that a conscious decision on your part?
It was like yeah, the smut is. I mean, smut is in romance, which is the highest selling genre by a
Hmm.
huge margin, and smut is everywhere. And there's a place for it. Like I have had phases where I will read like 10 mafia romance, highly smutty books. Like there's a place
Yeah.
for it, and it can be really fun. But I just think with the themes that the book deals with, which is sexual assault, anxiety, depression,
Yeah.
body dysmorphia, all these issues. I just don't think that there's a place for explicit sex in the book. It's not really a
Yeah.
book about sex, and I don't think that that's what readers want from when a reader picks up literary fiction. I don't think that that's what they're expecting, unless it's sort of like one of these really unique writers like Sally Rooney, who writes
Yeah.
literary stuff with really good sex scenes. But I also, it's not my favorite sort of thing to read, so I,
Hmm.
I write a lot of what I read as well.
Okay. I agree, by the way. I do not really like smut, and it's not that I'm some like pearl clutcher. I just like I and I've gotten a lot better about reading. I used to read a lot when I was younger, and then the last couple years I haven't. But like the past few years, I've read like 5 books a year. And every time I get to a sex scene, I'm like, all right, come on now. You know,
Yeah.
it doesn't really do it for me. And usually in the smut books, the writing is abysmal, and I can't handle that. I really hate bad writing. It makes me like cringe out of my skin.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree. That's one of my issues with the smut thing is
yeah,
especially online, like the language around it has just become so insipid, like spice rating and the tropes that they use to
crazy.
describe the smut. And it's
Yeah.
like the writing doesn't matter,
Hmm.
and yeah, it's just not my sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree with that. So I'm curious, and so you're in like the writing world and the literary world, you're in that universe. Like, what is there a consensus on smut? Like, how do other people view it? Is it seen like lowbrow, or what are people saying?
It's a really interesting question. I think smut most always has its place in romance and also
Hmm.
like now romantasy, which is this new thing. And that is genre fiction, which is often considered lower, I suppose, lower brow than literary fiction.
Yeah.
Meaning that if it's a detective story, if it's a thriller, a romance, a western, they have a very discernible plot.
Yeah.
And they're driven by that plot. And if you're a reader of romance, you know exactly when the first act breakup is going to come and exactly
Hmm.
when they're going to get together and have a sex scene in act three. Literary fiction avoids those sorts of kind of simple formulas.
Yeah.
And in doing so, I think it also avoids this expectation that you have to have a sex scene here or there. Some people, like I said, like Sally Rooney, they're doing something really interesting, and I would describe it as like literary romance. They have, in my opinion, good writing with also sex scenes. But by and large, I think the smut thing is associated with genre, which
Yeah.
is, yeah.
So when you describe your book as literary fiction and Sally Rooney as literary, what do you mean by that?
I mean that it just the most important thing in the book is the quality of the prose,
Okay.
whether that is innovation, like
Hmm.
experimentation with prose, they're doing something different, something artful, something just simply beautiful in the prose. It's the pleasure that you get from the book is in enjoying the craft, the
Yeah.
creation of the words themselves and how they work together, rather than necessarily the plot.
Okay. So like this is great. I love learning this stuff. And I probably already have, but I forgot. So I read my favorite book that I've read this year was called The Great Believers. Have you heard of it? So that one I think is plot driven.
Mm,
I guess I would say that that one was not literary
yeah.
because writing was the writing was good. Like the writing was really solid. But it was pretty like plot driven.
Okay. It well, it was a finalist for the National Book Award, which is a literary award. And like if
Okay.
anyone's ever asking for like literary recommendations, I always say like look at the National Book Award. They have some of the best literary fiction
Yeah.
out there. I think like it's not that plot is secondary, but more that if the writing itself is strong and you can tell as a reader that it's strong
Hmm.
because because it not because of the plot, not because there's
Yeah.
twists or a surprise or something
Yeah.
horrible in the plot. If the writing is quality in and of itself, I think that that would be enough to describe it as literary. I mean, it says historical fiction, which I suppose is another genre, but you can have literary historical fiction.
That is really interesting. So are the your cohorts in your PhD, is the name of the game writing literary novels or are people into different things?
So, my PhD is much more academic. So the writing creatively is quite outside of the PhD.
Okay.
Everyone in my cohort in some way deals with, I believe it's like the 16th to the early 19th centuries.
Yeah.
They in some way deal with literature with another discipline. So mine is
Okay.
music. People do fine art. So those are
Yeah.
kind of the barometers of our research.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Is it common for other PhD students to write a novel, or are you like kind of this all-star?
Um, I can't think of anyone that I know doing their PhD that has a novel out, but I will say it's very common for English literature students to write. That is
Okay.
big overlap because I think if you just are the sort of person that reads a lot and you like reading, I do
Hmm.
think you may inevitably just think I may as well try it myself.
Yeah. So with the modern era that we're in with like book talk, spicy audiobooks, what's your take on all of this? And like there are trends that people are reading more, but the
Yeah.
quality of the popular books has gone down. What's your take on that?
Yeah, it's hard. It's good that people are reading, and it's kind of the same as Harry Potter 20 years ago. Like, is that
Yeah.
high literature? Is it highly literary? No, but it got millions of kids reading, and
Hmm.
many of those kids have stayed reading because of
Yeah.
that book. I think some of the things I have read that have been huge on BookTok and Bookstagram, and I've read them because I've seen them just
Yeah.
lauded on these
Yeah.
platforms. I've been so disappointed by the
Yeah.
quality and I don't even go into them expecting high literature,
Yeah.
but I just am so disappointed in them. And it's hard for literary fiction. It's a very hard time for literary fiction
Yeah.
because there's no market for it because readers are into romantasy and genre and that's fine as well. I would also say my more optimistic view is as long as there's been high literature, there's been genre.
Yeah.
There were the pulps in the 60s, there were the romances in the 70s, the bodice ripper romances. It's always been there. Um, so it's not new, but I do
Hmm.
think it does come at the expense of literary fiction, and it takes
Yeah.
some of the market away from literary fiction.
What would you say are the benefits? Like, what would someone have to gain from getting into literary fiction, and where should they start?
I think literary fiction is an art, and I think uh, engaging in any way with art is just good for
Yeah.
people because it's about empathy and it's about humanity and it's about connecting with other people in a way that is perhaps unexpected, in a way that you might not have done before. It's also about learning about other people that you
Yeah.
might not know about, learning about issues that you might not be aware of. I guess I would probably start one of my favorite literary fiction books of the last like 15 years was The Brief Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde by Junot Diaz, which won the Pulitzer, I think, in
Yeah.
2008. And that was a huge, huge literary fiction book. And it's also really fun.
Hmm.
So, and it's just a master class. It's like one of the
Okay.
best books
Yeah.
of the century,
Um,
in my opinion. I would start there.
yeah, I get like with my relationship to reading, is weird, I guess, because I always, like I mentioned earlier, I just really like good writing. Um, but I do love like with reading a really like challenging book and feeling rewarded when you finish it. The hardest book, I read a really hard book this year and challenged myself. I read a book called Bonfire of the Vanities.
Yeah, yeah,
Have you
that
heard of
is,
it?
yeah, yeah. It is hard. It's tough. Yeah.
I know. So I moved to New York almost 2 years ago, and my goal, like when I moved here, was to like try my best to consume mostly New York media to learn, or media like based in New York to learn about like different times here, whatever. So I Googled, I was like, what's the most New York novel of all time? And Bonfire of the
Yeah.
Vanities came up. It was written in the 80s. It's like 700 pages long, tiny. The font was so
Yeah.
small, or the size, I don't know. But and it's kind of about like the social and politics of New York, like also on Wall Street, which like I'm literally having my birthday party next week is themed like New York in the 80s Wall
Oh,
Street.
that's
Like
great.
I
Yeah.
love that whole vibe. And that book took me like 2 months to finish. And I did feel really accomplished when I was finished. But I did not even like it. And I was like, fuck. Ugh.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, Tom Wolfe is very also like of his time. Um,
Yeah.
and it's an iconic book. Like just that first scene with the taxi, he has that
Yeah.
interaction with that taxi driver is
Okay. That doesn't even happen until 260 pages into the book.
really, am I misremember? Wow, really?
Yeah.
In my mind, that's like the first page. I guess that just shows how dense it is.
No,
Um,
I was like, when is this supposed to get going?
yeah, yeah. No, it's one of those meandering of its time books. But
Yeah.
if you want something similar, I would check out Martin Amis's Money, which is kind
Okay.
of it's half set in New York City in the 80s and half
Yeah.
in London. And
Okay.
it's quite dense, but it's shorter. I think it's probably 400 pages. And if you like good writing, he's recently died, but he was
Yeah.
one of the best to do it. And I think it moves a little quicker.
Mm-hmm. And with Bonfire of the Vanities, because I was reading it and it's hard to read. Like it was, and I was like, am I just a product of being Gen Z or being born in 1997? Because it wasn't written that long ago. It was only written in the 80s, but like I was struggling to like understand a lot of the phrases that they use, like the way that he spoke. And I was like, I was like, this isn't classic literature. So then I read Truman Capote's In Cold Blood, which
Oh,
was written in the 50s. And that I was flying through that. That was way
yeah,
easier to read.
that's such a brilliant book. I think, well, Woolf and a lot of these 80s male writers, they were
Yeah.
postmodernists. And so they were very self-conscious of being somewhat complicated. Like what you're seeing when you think it's a bit complex is them doing that in a very self-aware way. So they were the
Yeah.
postmodernists, so they wanted to do something new. They wanted to like deconstruct the
Yeah.
first half of the 20th century. And so they did that through their writing, through complications in their writing.
Yeah. I
Not the way that they wrote.
yeah, this is so validating to me because I was reading it and I was like, am I stupid? Like,
Oh,
why am I
it's
not understanding this?
yeah. No,
But
it's a product
yeah,
of the time. Yeah.
and sorry, I'm like going off my questions
Oh,
now
yeah.
because I'm like, well, I get to talk to like an author now. Let me ask you all my questions. Like I love historical fiction, I think, because I just really I love to understand like times before me, but I found that like reading modern historical fiction can sometimes be disappointing to me because when I do my own research, I'm like, they didn't do that back then. So I like to read something that was actually written in the time that it would takes place in. But then I run the risk of not even fucking understanding what they're talking about.
And but that's part of like the postmodernist project. They want that effect. That's part of it.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Okay, so Literally Heinous, we are a pop culture podcast first. So I wanted to ask you if you've given it any thought if the Gilded Butterfly Effect were to be adapted into a movie or TV show, who would you want to play the characters?
Oh my God, that's a great one. I have in my mind Daisy Jones, was in Sally Rooney's Normal People, because to me
Yeah.
she's like this campus queen, and I feel like she could be Stella. Um,
Yes.
like she's beautiful and self-assured, and I feel like she could
Daisy
be.
Edgar Jones, right?
Oh wait, what did I say?
You
Daisy
said
Jones.
Daisy Jones, like Daisy Jones in the Six,
Oh, Daisy Edgar Jones. Yes, thank
but
you.
I knew what you meant. I'm just
You
making
knew.
sure that we're
Yeah,
all
that's
following.
exactly who I meant. Gosh, I don't know. I have to be honest with you, I'm so bad at remembering actors and actresses' names, but I will say when I think about some kind of film or TV adaptation, I do think about Euphoria, and I think
Hmm.
it would have a lot of those similar vibes, a lot of the similar aesthetics and
Yeah.
looks of that show, maybe like 5 years later in college.
Yeah. Euphoria is, I mean, there's so many critiques of it, but like it is a cultural moment and you cannot deny that.
Yeah. No, you can't. And yeah, there of course any good show will have a lot of criticisms too, but yeah, it's similar to the book. It's kind of like grotesquely fascinating
Yeah.
watching young people like destroy their lives.
Yeah. So my casting for the book. So I picked Elsie Fisher for Penny. Elsie Fisher from eighth grade and also in season two of Summer I Turned Pretty.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Yes.
Yeah, because she's kind of like, like a little artsy, like a little weird. And I feel like she'd be a good age for this. And then I also picked Rain Spencer, who's also in The Summer I Turned Pretty. She's the friend, Taylor. I picked her for like Millie because I thought she'd be kind of like the badass, like drug dealer.
I see that. I remember Taylor from The Summer I Turned Pretty.
And then I picked Madeline Klein for Stella.
Oh, I could definitely see that. Yeah, she is the cool pretty girl for sure.
Yeah. For boy characters, I have no idea. Men don't matter to me in media, so
I would agree. And the men are secondary in the book. It is about the women.
yeah, truly. So in your next book, what kind of world would you want to explore, or do you think you want to stay in the coming of age?
Well, I have my short story collection coming out in February of next
Okay.
year, 2026, which is all set within a school. They're all interconnected stories that are set in a high school. Similar issues that come up in this book, all told from different perspectives of like a teacher, a student, various people in this school. I like coming of age because I like dealing with women's issues, and I think a lot of
Hmm.
those issues are especially pronounced at that
Yeah.
age. Um, and I think there's a lot that you can do structurally with coming of age. Kids are unpredictable and weird and crazy, and I like how that can
Yeah.
inform like the writing. So I think I'd like to revisit for a full length novel, my second full length novel. I'd like to go into a school, like a high
Yeah.
school, from the perspective of a teacher, though.
Ooh. Yeah, I did read one of your short stories, the one with the teacher, Jane.
Yes. Is it the one with the sort of gross ending?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Like that was a high school story. So yeah, that was fun. Okay, so to wrap up, we're gonna play a literally heinous original game. This is called Chic or Freak. So I'm gonna rapid fire different like questions or scenarios to you, book related. And we're gonna decide if it's chic, so like cool, sexy, fun, unique, or freak, which is like weird, gauche, tacky. Okay, are
Okay.
you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Enemies to lovers trope.
Freak.
Ooh, why?
Well, it's like all of these tropes. I just
Yeah.
think it's not even like the thing itself. It's just like, why do you have to tell us? Like let us just
Yeah.
read it. Why does it need a label?
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Um, This is kind of a hot debate in Brooklyn. Performative reading in public.
Chic.
Okay. So what if, let me paint a scene for you. So I personally, I'm okay with people reading in public. I have a friend
Yeah.
that really hates it. Um, but for me, it's like when I see people are on like the first page of the book and you're reading at like a bar, I'm like, girl, come on.
That's oh no, reading at a bar, that I'm not sure. When I think of it, I think of reading on the tube here in London or
Okay.
the subway, which I do all the time. I also am guilty of like sending my fiance on the tube with my book and having him read it on the way to work so that people see it. So
Oh,
I cannot say that it is freak because I have
oh
yeah, I
my
have done.
God. You need to have him like do reactions, like have him
Yes. Yeah.
rereading it and be like, like,
Yeah.
no.
Have you guys heard of this one? Yeah.
So like yeah, in Brooklyn, like what if it was like some guy with like cuffed jeans and glasses and like matcha in a bag on page one of Patti
Yeah.
Smith's Just Kids,
Oh,
Chic or
yeah,
Freak?
that is freak. And it's the matcha and the Just Kids. That is enough. I guess it's the context. That is freak.
I've never even read Just Kids. I don't even know what it's about.
It's I mean it's good. It's short and it's quick. It's one of
Mhm.
these coming of age stories as well, kind of similar to
Yeah.
maybe like Sylvia Plath. Yeah.
Okay. So Chic or Freak using ChatGPT to generate inspiration.
Chic.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. Is that controversial?
No, I don't think so. I mean, obviously, I think my usage of ChatGPT, I try to like not use it for creative stuff really because I really want it to be like my brain. But I think like it's okay to just like give me a list of ideas and you just like siphon through them.
Yeah, and I think giving like the sort of thing you're going after and then a couple of ideas around it I think is okay, and I don't think it's something that you wouldn't necessarily come up with on your own. I think
Yeah.
it's just a way to structure your thinking in a lot of ways. I think literary fiction is in a good place with ChatGPT because romance novels and these very
Yeah.
structured formulaic novels they can be written by ChatGPT, but if you do have an idiosyncratic voice, it can't be replicated. So I think if you
Yeah.
really are after that, ChatGPT won't truly help.
True. Yeah, for sure. Chic or Freak, book clubs with the girlies where you barely talk about the book.
Chic.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all for like any guys to get the girls together, if
Hmm.
that's what it takes. If you need to have the book in hand, then that's what it takes.
Okay, Chic or Freak, not finishing a book for book club.
Chic. I don't believe in finishing books that you don't like.
That's tea. Chic or Freak, reading your own reviews on Goodreads.
Freak, but I do it, so I'm aware that I shouldn't.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I would too.
Yeah, it's really really it's hard not to.
Oh my God, are you kidding me? If there was like a platform where people were talking about me, like that would be my homepage. I would
Yeah.
live on that. What is the like I know like Letterboxd in the film community is kind of like a little controversial. I love it, unfortunately. But like
Okay.
what is the view on Goodreads or is there somewhere else where people are like communally talking about books?
I think Storygraph is having a bit of a moment. I'm not on it, but that's one that I see online. Goodreads is okay. I say like take every single Goodreads rating with a grain of salt. Like some of the
Yeah.
best ever works of literature. I think Great Gatsby has like a 3.5 on there, and like
Hmm.
in my mind, that's like one of the greatest works of literature ever.
For
So,
sure.
and then literary fiction as well usually has a hard time on Goodreads.
Yeah.
Because they have a smaller audience and they're more specific. So I use it to track my reading, but I don't put any stock in their ratings.
Okay, that makes sense. Last one, Chic or Freak, Greek life.
Chic, yeah. And which might be strange if you've read the book, but I think especially for sororities, I think women-centric organizations and any group that's for women can be really important and really helpful. And
Yeah.
I don't want to deride the legitimacy of the sorority thing in the book, but
Hmm.
more so just how the system and its power
Yeah.
dynamics can impact people within it. But I think inherently, the idea of a sorority can be really beneficial to young women.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I was in one for like a few years. I don't regret it. I made so many friends out of it. I would not join a sorority again.
Yeah, and I'm the same, exactly. And
Yeah.
it's nice, and now that we're older, we have hindsight into it.
Yeah.
But there's a reason people are attracted to it, and I think if that's what you're looking for, if you want a social life and you want friends, I wouldn't judge any young person for going after it.
Totally. Okay, I think those are all my questions. Is there anything else you want to talk about that we didn't talk about with the book? I mean, there's so much to cover here, but I don't want to give anyone spoilers.
Thank you. No, I think that was great. Really, really good questions, and I just hope that
Yes.
it finds its readers.
Well, congratulations. This is such a big deal. Like, is this everything you've ever dreamed of? Like, since you want to be a writer?
Yeah, this is of course every author's dream to have their book published by a great press and have it out in
Yeah.
the world, and it's wonderful. Of course, your dreams always
Yes.
change when you achieve them. So now I'm like,
Yeah.
what do I book to?
I mean,
But
you're only 27 or 20. I turn 28 next week. So I don't know. I know we're the same like area,
27,
but that is
yeah, yeah,
published book
19.
before 30. Like, that's crazy.
Thank you. Yeah, it's very exciting.
Good. Well, I hope that your fiance is celebrating you and bowing down to you like the queen that you are. I hope you've had amazing launch
Sure.
parties.
Flowers next to the
Oh,
book.
so exciting. Congratulations. Thank you so much for coming on Literally Heinous. Haniacs, if you live in Brooklyn, I will let you borrow I actually have two copies, so I will let you borrow my copy. Really, really, really good. If you like Euphoria, if you like Big Ten schools, and if you just like good fucking writing, and some of you bitches can stand to read some good writing, okay? Because I know what some of y'all bitches read, okay? Okay. Well, thank you so much again, Heather. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.